Angela Morris never expected her quiet life in Seattle to turn into a storm, but everything changed in a single year. She had always been the calm one, the dependable one. The woman who planned every detail and kept her emotions tucked neatly in their places. She loved peace. She loved routine. She loved the sense that tomorrow would look the same as today, but life rarely respects. The plans she made. Her relationship with Daniel Brooks was once her safe place. They met in college, grew together through their early struggles, and spent nearly 5 years building a life filled with shared dreams. Angela believed they were unbreakable. She believed they were headed toward marriage, a home, maybe even a family someday. She believed in him. For a long time, that belief felt enough. Then, slowly. It wasn't. It started after Daniel returned from a 3-month business trip. Angela had been excited for his return. She had planned a small dinner, bought his favorite dessert, and even left a welcome note for him in the kitchen. But when he walked through the door, something was missing. He hugged her, but the embrace was half-hearted. His smile was thin, almost practiced. He spoke, but his mind seemed somewhere else. She noticed instantly. She always noticed. In the weeks that followed, the distance only grew. Daniel drifted through conversations, forgot promises, canceled dates, and often stared at his phone like he was waiting for news he didn't want to share. Angela tried to stay patient. She asked gentle questions. She offered comfort. But every time she reached for him, he stepped back, leaving her grasping at empty air. One night, as they sat in their living room watching a movie, Angela leaned her head on his shoulder. He didn't move. He didn't hold her. He didn't even blink. It felt like she was leaning on a statue, not the man she loved. The ache settled deep inside her. She needed a distraction. Something to remind her she still had control over her own life. That was when she signed up for a community renovation project, a program that brought volunteers together to fix an old abandoned library downtown. Angela loved design, colors, and creating warmth, so the project felt natural. She didn't expect anything else to happen there. But on her first day, she met Evan Carter. He was a carpenter with messy brown hair, sleeves rolled up to his elbows, sawdust on his shirt, and a smile that made even strangers feel like long-lost friends. He wasn't polished or perfect. He wasn't quiet or distant. He wasn't anything like Daniel. And maybe that was why Angela noticed him right away. Evan introduced himself with an easy grin. "You must be Angela. Heard you're the designer with magic hands?" She laughed, not used to compliments that came without hesitation or hidden meaning. He worked with energy, joked with other volunteers, and treated everyone like a friend. When she asked for help moving a heavy cabinet, he lifted it as if it weighed nothing and winked at her, like it was the simplest favor in the world. Angela didn't flirt back. She didn't even think of it as flirting. She just enjoyed the warmth, the kindness, the attention she no longer received at home. Days turned into weeks. The library walls brightened. The volunteers grew closer. And Angela found herself looking forward to those hours with Evan more than she wanted to admit. One afternoon, while they were repainting a long hallway, their hands accidentally brushed when both reached for the same roller. It was small, barely a touch, but something inside her shifted like a light turning on after months of darkness. She pulled her hand back, cheeks warm. Evan noticed, but he didn't tease her. Instead, he stepped back respectfully and handed her the roller with a soft smile. She tried to ignore the feeling, but it stayed with her. At home, things with Daniel didn't improve. His silence became heavier. His absence grew longer, and Angela felt like a guest in her own relationship. She didn't want to admit that her heart was tired, but every night she lay awake wondering. When love became something she had to chase instead of something she received freely. Finally, Daniel asked her to dinner. Angela's heart fluttered with hope. Maybe he was ready to talk. Maybe the man she loved was finally coming back to her. But halfway through the meal, under soft restaurant lights, Daniel looked at her with guilt in his eyes, guilt she couldn't ignore. "Angela, I need to tell you something." Her breath stilled. She had feared those words for weeks. "I don't know who I am anymore," he said slowly. "I don't know what I want. I feel lost, and I don't know how to fix it." It wasn't betrayal. It wasn't anger. But it was a confession she wasn't prepared for. She had been fighting to keep them together while he wasn't even sure he wanted to stay. Her heart cracked, clean and deep. She forced a nod, pretending she understood everything, pretending she was strong enough to handle the weight of that truth. But inside she felt like a balloon deflating, collapsing in a quiet, painful way. She walked home alone that evening, her hands cold, her steps slow. Streetlights flickered as she passed. Every one felt like a reminder of the life she was losing when she reached her building. She spotted a familiar figure standing near the sidewalk, Evan, holding his toolbox. Wearing that same open expression she had grown used to. I forgot to return this," he said, lifting the box. But his playful tone faded when he saw her eyes. "Angela, what happened?" For the first time in months, she didn't hide. Her voice broke. "I'm just tired." Evan didn't move closer, but his presence alone softened the ache in her chest. He wasn't trying to fix her. He wasn't asking for anything. He was simply there, steady and warm. Exactly when she needed someone to just exist beside her. She told him only a little enough for him to understand the heartbreak, but not enough to burden him with details. He listened quietly, looking at her like she mattered, like her pain was something worth caring about. The truth settled. Inside her, with a frightening clarity, she was standing between the man she had loved for years and the man who made her feel alive again. It wasn't about wanting to mend. It wasn't about comparing them. It wasn't even about desire. It was about realizing she had spent so long choosing someone else. She had forgotten to choose herself. She looked at Evan through blurry eyes, her voice barely a whisper. "What if I don't know who I'm supposed to choose?" Evan breathed in slowly. His shoulders rose and fell in a gentle rhythm. "You don't have to choose right now," he said softly, "especially not when you're hurting." His patience disarmed her. His kindness made her chest ache. "But what if waiting makes everything worse?" She asked. "What if?" He replied quietly. "Waiting is exactly what you need." She didn't respond. She couldn't. Her heart was pulled in two directions, one tied to her past, the other reaching for something new. Angela wasn't ready for answers. She wasn't ready for decisions. All she knew was that the life she had carefully built was unraveling, and the emotions she tried so hard to control were spilling over faster than she could catch them. That night, as she walked toward her apartment door, she glanced back at Evan. He stood there under the porch light, watching with concern, gentleness, and something unspoken, something warmer than friendship, but too respectful to cross into anything more. She felt the world shift beneath her feet. For the first time in her life, she realized one love wasn't enough if it didn't make her feel whole. Part 1 ends with Angela standing at a crossroads, caught between loyalty, longing, heartbreak, hope, and the possibility of a love that didn't have to hurt. Angela Morris had spent weeks trapped between the past and the present. Daniel Brooks, the man she had loved for years, was trying to find his way back, while Evan Carter, the new warmth in her life, had quietly made himself a part of her days without ever demanding more than her presence. Both cared for her, okay? Both mattered, but Angela realized she could not give her heart fully to anyone until she understood herself. The tension of indecision weighed on her daily life. At home, she avoided mirrors, afraid to see the worry etched on her face. At work, her designs lacked the usual spark, her sketches flat and uninspired. She tried to focus, tried to remind herself of the love she had once known. But her thoughts kept drifting to Evan's smile, to his soft patience, to the way he made her feel noticed without judgment. Daniel, too, did not give up easily. He sent messages filled with apologies and explanations. He asked if they could have quiet dinners, long walks, and honest conversations. He admitted his flaws and mistakes without defensiveness, and every word tugged at the part of Angela that still loved him. His presence reminded her of comfort, of shared memories, of a love forged over years. But it also reminded her of how much she had been hurting, of the emptiness she felt when he was distant, of the nights she had cried alone. Evan, on the other hand, offered no pressure. He never asked for promises. He never demanded her attention. He simply existed in her life with steady consistency, always offering a smile, a helping hand, a listening ear. The library renovation project continued, and their paths kept crossing. He brought laughter to moments that had once felt heavy, small gestures that reminded her the world was not entirely full of heartache. Angela's emotions became a whirlwind she could no longer ignore. She realized that loyalty to the past could not protect her from the future she wanted. Love was not about holding on blindly. It was about understanding who she was and what made her heart truly alive. But admitting that truth was terrifying. It meant telling Daniel she could no longer rely solely on their history. It meant telling Evan that her heart was not fully his yet. It meant facing the truth that sometimes love required patience and self-discovery before it could flourish. One evening, Angela decided she could no longer live in uncertainty. She invited both men to the newly restored library. She needed clarity, honesty, and, most importantly, an opportunity to express herself without holding back. She hoped the walls she had helped repair could hold the tension. The emotions, the vulnerability she carried, Daniel arrived first. He looked worn but genuine, a mix of hope and nervousness in his eyes. "Angela, I want to fix this," he said quietly. "I want us again. I know I've made mistakes. I know I've hurt you with my distance, but I am trying. I am here and I want to be with you if you'll let me." Angela's heart ached as she listened. His words carried weight, truth, and love. But they also carried the memory of the nights she had spent waiting for him to return emotionally. She wanted to reach out, to take his hand, to feel the connection they had once shared. But she also knew that doing so would ignore the growth she had experienced, the self-awareness she had earned, the subtle joy she felt when Evan was near. Evan arrived moments later, quietly stepping into the library. When he saw Daniel, his expression shifted slightly, a shadow of discomfort crossing his face. But he did not leave. He stood back, patient and steady, waiting for Angela to speak. There was a tenderness in his eyes, a silent reassurance that he would respect her space, her choices, her emotions. Angela looked between them, feeling the full weight of her decision, though she knew it was not truly about choosing one over the other. It was about acknowledging herself, her needs, and her heart's desires. She took a deep breath, letting the tension in the room settle into a stillness that allowed honesty to surface. "I didn't bring you here to create conflict," she began, her voice calm but firm. "I brought you here because I realized something important about myself. I've spent so long trying to make love work that I forgot to make myself whole. I've been leaning on people, hoping they would fill the parts of me that felt empty. And the truth is, I need to find those parts for myself first." Daniel nodded slowly, understanding and sorrow mingling in his eyes. "I see," he said softly. "I can't force you to feel what you're not ready to feel. I wanted to try again. But I understand that you need time. I only hope that, in time, we can find our way back together, or at least find peace." Angela looked at Evan. His jaw was tight, his hands slightly clenched, but he did not interrupt. He waited, giving her the space to continue, as he had always done. "I can't ask you to wait," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "I can't ask you to hope for something that might not come. But I also can't ignore what I feel. I need to stand on my own to understand who I am, and to learn how to love fully without relying on anyone else to make me whole." The three of them stood in silence, surrounded by walls that now held shelves of books, new colors, and the echoes of laughter from volunteers. The library, a place of growth and restoration, mirrored the changes Angela had begun within herself. She realized that love was not about possession or need, was about presence, honesty, and connection. And right now, she needed to focus on the presence and honesty within herself before she could offer it to anyone else. Weeks passed, and Angela continued her journey of self-discovery. She immersed herself in work, in the library project, and in her own hobbies. She reconnected with friends she had neglected, spent quiet mornings exploring the city she loved, and allowed herself moments of reflection and solitude. The ache in her chest softened as she learned to embrace her independence, to find joy in her own company, and to trust that her heart would guide her to the right path when the time was right. Daniel respected her space. He continued to reach out occasionally, sending notes of support and gentle reminders of the bond they shared. His patience was steady, his care genuine, but he never pressured her. He, too, had his own journey, learning that love sometimes required letting go, even if only temporarily, to allow someone to grow. Evan remained a constant presence. He sent messages not of expectation, but of warmth. He laughed with her, encouraged her, and offered support without intrusion. His patience taught Angela a new kind of loved one that didn't demand, didn't chase, didn't plead. It simply existed, steady and reliable, waiting for the right moment to bloom fully. Months passed. Angela's heart grew lighter. She felt stronger. She discovered that the fear she had carried for so long was not a weakness, but a sign that she cared deeply, that she had invested herself fully, and that she deserved love that was equally invested. The library project concluded, leaving a tangible mark of her effort, but more importantly, leaving her with the confidence that she could create beauty, stability, and connection in her life on her own terms. Then one evening, Angela returned to the library for a quiet walk among the shelves. She breathed in the familiar scent of books, the polished wood, and the subtle traces of paint. She felt a sense of completeness, a clarity she hadn't known she could achieve. It was in that moment she realized she was ready to step forward, not out of fear, not out of obligation, but out of genuine choice. She reached for her phone and sent a message she had been hesitating to send. Not to Daniel, not to anyone else, but to Evan. A simple note filled with honesty. I'm ready. Not because I need someone to complete me, but because I want to share my life with someone who has been patient and kind while I found myself. Evan's reply came quickly. A message of warmth and relief. I'll be there. When you're ready, we'll take this together. They met at the library that evening, under the soft glow of the lights. Evan's eyes softened as he saw her, his expression a mix of emotion and restraint. Angela approached him, feeling a nervous excitement that was different from the anxious tension she had known before. "Does this mean?" he asked, his voice low. "It means I finally chose," Angela said, her words steady. "Not out of need, not out of fear, but because I'm ready with a full heart and a clear mind." Evan reached for her hand, holding it gently, not too tightly, not too quickly. They walked through the library together, side by side, a quiet understanding forming between them. No words were necessary to convey the growth, patience, and respect that had led them here. Angela had once felt torn between two men, between past comfort and new possibility. But through patience, reflection, and self-discovery, she learned the most important truth. Love begins with oneself. By standing alone and understanding her own heart, she was finally able to step forward with clarity, honesty, and the readiness to embrace love that was steady, respectful, and mutual in the quiet glow of the library, surrounded by the books she had helped restore and the new memories she had created. Angela realized that sometimes the path to love was not a straight line. Sometimes it required stepping back, waiting, and growing before moving forward. And when she finally did, the love she found was not a replacement for what she had lost, was a reflection of her growth, patience, and courage. For the first time in months, Angela felt complete. Not because she had chosen someone else, not because she had finally let go of the past, but because she had chosen herself. And in choosing herself, she had finally opened the door to the love she deserved.